Welcome to today's CRM Magazine Roundtable web event, brought to you by ParkCentral and Hart Hanks. I'm David Myron, Editorial Director of CRM Magazine, and I'll be the moderator for today's broadcast. Our presentation today is titled, How to Integrate Social Media into Customer Service. Before we start, allow me to explain how you can participate in this live broadcast. At the end of the event, there will be a question and answer session. If you have a question during the presentation, just type it into the question box provided and click on the submit button. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible, but if your question has not been answered during the show, you will receive an email response to it within a few days. Plus, if you'd like a copy of the presentation, you can download a PDF from the resource icon at the bottom of the console once the event is archived. Now, I'll introduce our speakers for today's event. Anal Patel is the Head of Product Marketing at ParkCentral, and Rusty Langford is the Vice President of Client Services for Customer Service Experience Support at Hart Hanks. To review the speakers' bios, please click on the arrow under the speakers' photos. So now, without further ado, let me pass the event over to Anal Patel, Head of Product Marketing at ParkCentral. Welcome to the broadcast, Anal.
Thanks, David. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here today. Thank you for coming and joining us. As David mentioned, my name is Anal, and I head up product marketing at ParkCentral. For those of you who are unfamiliar with ParkCentral, we offer a customer engagement platform that enables you to meet your customer service needs across any channel, particularly social. And here are some of our customers, such as T-Mobile, Netflix, Delta, Nordstrom, and Uber, love us because of our ability to connect all of their social channels with an efficient workflow, enabling them to deliver personalized and proactive interactions. Be sure to check out sparkcentral.com for more information. So let's get started. Today I'm going to talk about how to integrate social media into contact centers. Let's get a little bit of background going. So there are many monikers, if you will, that have been applied to today where we are. We're in the age of messaging, the age of the customer, the now generation, and they're all very true. We are living in a world today of contextual communication and of instant gratification. And social media has conditioned consumers to getting immediate feedback. In fact, a lot of customer service these days is happening via social media, and customers expect you to respond as though you were one of their social followers. The portion of U.S. online adults using social care grew 68% from 2012 to 2014, and 15% of companies today claim that more than 25% of their service requests come via social. These numbers are only growing. And the expectations from your customers is that social media is a viable and a valid channel to communicate directly with you. And the risk of failing to meet these expectations goes beyond losing customers. People who are annoyed by your customer care or lack thereof can and do blast negative comments about your brand to their networks and their networks. McKinsey research shows that a single negative post on social media has on average as much impact on consumer decisions as 5 positive ones. So customer data has shown that responding to negative or positive comments on social media drives customer loyalty significantly, so do it. I wanted to talk a little bit about why social care needs to reside in the hands of customer service, aka the contact center. So 1 in 4 consumers says that they've used social media to get a response from an organization, and 52% of people who tweet your brand expect a response within an hour. That number goes up to 72% if it's a complaint. You know, when social was first leveraged by companies, both B2B and B2C, it resided in the hands of marketing organizations where they believed they could send messages out and not necessarily have to respond to those coming in. But that is no longer an option. Social care has to reside in the hands of customer service in the contact center. And you're going to see it becoming more and more so as the days go on. So you may be saying, that's great and all, but how do I actually get started? I'll be upfront and honest and say that it varies depending on your business, your company size, your product, and more. But what I'm going to do in my talk is present a few guidelines for you on how you get started thinking about social care in contact center. And I want to get this out of the way. This is something I hear all the time when I'm talking to potential customers of ParkCentral or anything. Every major vertical or industry will have a presence on social. Twitter has released customer service data that has shown that the growth in tweets aimed at brands and service handles has grown pretty exponentially over the last 2 years. So I urge you not to think that this doesn't apply to you. When I saw this, I was amazed to see that the largest percentage growth was actually in the healthcare industry. So wherever you are, whatever work you do, social is a viable channel for you. So now that I've laid that background, I'll present 4 steps to getting started with social care. Step 1, look at your current situation and start from there. Very obvious, but it's important. Is this your current model? I apologize. I have some check marks on my slide that seem to have disappeared on this. But imagine check marks under store, phone, and email on the happy face, and then a check mark under the crying face for social. Remember that customers expect consistent experiences across all of your social channels, so you really need to evaluate if you're actually doing that. Mastering a few and going radio silent on others isn't an option. So when you're thinking about your customer experience, imagine it to be consistent across all of the channels. So here's some guidelines. 1, start by looking at whether people are actually talking about your company or asking questions on social media. That is a good sign. It means that they want to communicate with you there. What channels are they communicating with you on? Twitter and Facebook are the largest customer service channels, with Twitter actually being a little bit more popular for service and support channels, but it really all depends upon your business. You want to also look at how much social care can improve your customer service and lower costs. Customers do is set a baseline for gauging the extent to which social care would improve customer service and lower costs. So it typically costs about $1, less than $1 in interaction on social, whereas telephone care is about $6 a call, and email care costs about $2.50 to $5 per interaction. So when you're setting up your baseline and looking at your current situation, think about how social can help you lower costs. And then when you're actually going about implement it, think about how you want to differentiate based on customer experience. Almost 30% of social media users prefer social care to phoning customer service, and it's not just the, quote, young set. The over 65 set also uses social care. Remember that positive social care interactions are 3 times more likely. People with positive social care interactions are 3 times more likely to recommend your brand to others. So don't just be there to be there on social, be there to actually create a positive experience. And the companies that start with a clear definition of what they want to do and have evaluated their social space, companies like Delta and T-Mobile, which I'll cover in a little bit, they're the ones who come out as the customer experience winners. So now that you've got your baseline and strategy down, one of the second most asked questions is, how do you set up and staff your team? It depends. Not a satisfying answer, but the reality is that it does depend on a variety of factors. So I'm going to give you some questions to consider on how you think about it. So when you're first thinking about staffing, one of the things you want to consider is, how are you going to set up your social care channel? Is it going to be highly interactive or announcement driven? So are you just going to put public service post stuff? So for example, if you're a utility company, do you just mention power outages or delays or general public service announcements? Or are you going to be a brand that plans on engaging not just with incoming questions, but mentions of your brand on social channels? There are companies out there that will actually have teams that search for any mention of their brand and respond to it. So highly interactive or announcement driven. Are you going to be 24/7 or have just extended business hours? According to a Gartner survey, 83% of organizations reported extending traditional business hours to offer social customer service, and 100% of those organizations reported that they responded to social customer service requests within 24 hours. So choose the one that best fits your needs. As to how you will actually staff and set up your team, we often get asked about social staff to volume ratios. And again, there is no tried and true formula. I don't think really anyone out there, and even analysts, have an answer to that question. It really depends on your volume of posts and the complexity of the questions and the time required to answer them. Part of your strategy as you start out and thinking about staffing will have to be to actually analyze those things and see what's the best ratio for you. With regards to whether that social team needs a specific skill set or training, that's something that we can help with. Right now, most social customer service organizations are housed separately within the broader customer service organization, largely because of people, process, and technology. And most of the social service agents only support social media. And the reason for this is, if you think about it, social is a public channel, right? It's no longer a private one-to-one interaction. The people that are actually out there responding, you want to make sure that they not only know how to respond or they have really great judgment on these different things, but they also can speak your brand language, write in a way that is associated with your brand, and can, may need specific special training. But the reality is this is all going to sort of integrate as we get more omni-channel in our social and other care. We're going to see social care or customer service reps that actually can speak to a lot of different channels, not just social. The next step is building a playbook to support your organization. It's actually what I would consider one of the most essential elements in the guidelines that I can offer you. So what channels should you support? Depends upon your business. Are your customers communicating more with you on Facebook or on Twitter or on any of these other social channels that I have listed underneath guidelines? Should you set up a separate care handle? You need to answer these questions, and your playbook is going to help you do that. So we always say make it easy for customers to migrate to social care by providing handles and hashtags. So let's take Twitter as an example. T-Mobile, Delta, they have specific social care handles on Twitter. What it does, it allows you to demonstrate how actively you resolve issues. Again, it's a public channel, and it encourages customers to communicate their positive interactions, right? You want them to not just tell you that they don't like something, but that they're thrilled with how happy they are with your service. Supporting social care, as you may recall, is cheaper than traditional channels. Setting up a social care handle is 5 minutes worth of work. In fact, brands with dedicated support handles showed an improvement in overall response rate, growing the average by 43%. So it does help to do that. How fast will you respond? It depends on your SLAs. The expectation on social channels is to receive a response within a few hours. Not fair, but it is what it is. So decide which, make sure that you have a playbook on how your agents are going to actually respond within your SLA for social. And what will be handled publicly or privately? That's also part of your playbook. So decide which posts can be public. So consider going public if responses have wider benefits beyond the individual. So do you have changing store hours or something that is more of a public announcement? Then respond to that question publicly. And then go private if you're dealing with personal information, such as account information or an issue that's quite sensitive. Then you want to usually go private in that. Twitter allows you to do direct messages, and Facebook also allows you to do private messages. One of the things you have to consider is social is not, within your website, so you have to think about security and protecting your customers' information. So when you're evaluating how to go about social, you're going to need a technology partner. And make sure that partner enables secure communication and authentication. It's essential to build and maintain customer trust. So if you're going to be asking them for private information, make sure that you have a secure way of authenticating that they are who they say that they are and that their information isn't going to be easily stolen or stolen at all. Define the metrics that matter. So this is another one that we get asked a lot. You're doing all of this work. How do you tell whether what you're doing is actually being effective? And it all begins with looking at the metrics that matter to your business and your business goals. Typical social metrics include customer-centric measures, such as customer satisfaction, as well as productivity measures, right? How much is my agent doing on social, and how are we seeing productivity gains? And this is such as how long it takes to resolve customer issues, the time to respond, all of these different things. We believe that social metrics must tie into contact center metrics. Typically, you'll see social has, metrics such as sentiment analysis or all of these different things which are typically marketing terms associated with the social care metrics. But look at the contact center metrics. Response times, resolution times, number of agent productivity, all of that. You can and should be measuring the same things for social. Just because it's a channel that is separate from how your traditional channels are doesn't mean you shouldn't be looking at those. And use those metrics to determine how to actually fix customer issues or underlying issues for customer issues. So instead of having, if you're having lots of transfers between reps, it doesn't mean that you need to be more responsive. It just means that you need to fix your processes on how you manage customer service representatives and how they're passing information back and forth. You also want to tie your metrics into the tie your metrics to their impact on behaviors such as customer loyalty and increased sales and whatnot. So we can talk a little bit more about that when I go over the case studies, but just some guidelines for you on that. Then, before I go into the case studies, I want to just sort of reiterate that embracing social leads to results. Social care can save money, savings, satisfaction, sales. Those are all things that you'll see with social care. It costs as little as $1 to resolve a customer issue on social media, which is nearly 1/6 as many call center interactions. This is information that I collected from a McKinsey report, but best-in-class social care companies improved customer satisfaction by 19% versus 5% for all others. And 82% of customers who have a good customer experience on Twitter are likely to recommend the brand based on their interaction. So that satisfaction is not in just that they say, yes, I'm happy with you. They're sharing it with other people. And sales. Companies that develop social care capabilities improved year-over-year revenue per contact by 6.7% through effective upselling, cross-selling, and customer churn reduction, versus a 12.1% decline for those without that capability. So you have to be embracing this. It has to be within your contact center, and you'll see so many efficiency gains as well as productivity gains and savings gains by taking on social care. So let's look at a couple of case studies. I want to talk through how some companies out there are actually doing this, and we'll start with T-Mobile. T-Mobile, ParkCentral customer, shameless plug there, has become a force to be reckoned with in social support. You know, the story of how they started out is really interesting because they decided, as the quote uncarrier, which is their tagline, that they would differentiate on their fierce commitment to customer support. They wanted their customers to have a voice, and they weren't afraid to show their dedication in a public channel. I encourage you to go to the T-Mobile page on Twitter and just see how they interact with people. It's always great to see how other people are doing it live. Their motto is listen, engage, and evolve, and they go big in social media. Their social channels, Twitter, Facebook, Google+, get around 80,000 messages a month, which comes to about 128 per hour, and they respond to all of them. How do they do that? Well, they invested the resources necessary to meet their customer demand, which, as you heard, is quite large. So this includes in-house support and engagement teams that offer 24/7 coverage. They use ParkCentral technology to securely authenticate customers' online identities with their CRM identities, creating a seamless customer experience. So I love this example where Emily was like, coverage in my network is spotty. Please improve, which is a pretty broad request. And T-Mobile responded with a very, very personal and contextual response within 11 minutes. They asked her to direct message their work and home address so that they could find out if any of the towers in the nearby areas were being upgraded. When they authenticated her securely using ParkCentral, they were able to see exactly where she lives, find that information out, and get back to her. That is a differentiated experience right there. That's so much more than we'll take care of an issue for you. That is going above and beyond. And their dedication has led to results. Their response times are within minutes, and their customer satisfaction rates have skyrocketed. The 3 S's that I presented a little bit before are true for them. They've seen improved savings, satisfaction, and sales on their social channels. And because of that, their commitment to using those channels in new and innovative ways is only increasing. So take this as inspiration as you get started in thinking about how you strategize and build your teams out. Another company that you may have heard of is Delta. And Delta has also really differentiated on social care. Delta, also a ParkCentral customer. Delta decided to become one of the early adopters of social care thanks to some pretty amazing change agents within the company. These leaders saw that people were talking about them on social and decided to join the conversation in 2010. So they've been at it for a while. And their approach was simple: offer the same care on social as they do on other channels. They started by analyzing volumes and staffing accordingly, and they also enabled their social reps to not only access reservation systems but make changes. So we think about that when you're enabling your team. What can they do? So they offer coverage 24/7 across multiple languages, and if you're frustrated for some reason with Delta and you need to get your flight rebooked, you can expect to have that done within a matter of minutes because their team is enabled to do so. The team sends several thousand messages per week, and they're constantly experimenting on new ways to be more proactive and social. And I think from what I've heard, you're going to see some pretty exciting things for them around this in the coming year as well. I want to quickly mention that Twitter actually released a study on Monday, this past Monday, that shows that positive interactions on social media with airlines, and I think this applies to all brands, can actually increase revenue numbers. Their main finding was that prompt customer service really does pay off. Customers who received replies from airlines on Twitter were more satisfied with their experience, more willing to recommend the airline, and willing to pay more money for a ticket for that airline in the future. So social care does pay off, and in many ways, and not investing is not an option. If you're interested in learning more about us and how we can help you succeed in this space, please do get in touch. I know I rushed through that a little bit, but I want to thank you for your time today. I hope you found this information helpful, and if you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A. I'd love to answer them afterwards. Back to you, David.
All right, great. Thank you for that, Anal. Now our next presenter is Rusty Langford, Vice President of Client Services for the Customer Experience Support Group at Harte Hanks. Welcome, Rusty.
Welcome, David. Thank you very much, and thanks, Anal, for that presentation. There will be a lot of complementary slides between what Anal and her company is doing and what we do at Harte Hanks. And Harte Hanks is a direct marketing company that provides many services, but one of which is contact center and customer support services. And what I want to share with you today are our approach towards how we build social support programs for our customers. So as we've discussed a little bit before, the challenge for social is it's a different animal than any other customer support channel, in that it is a public channel, and the people that are using it are typically more interested in influencing each other versus actually raising their hand and asking for some attention. So in many cases, they're not only trying to control what others or influence what others are doing, but they're trying to do it in such a way that gets the attention of the company they're dealing with. So it's no longer about what you have, but what you share. And so what we talk about from a Harte Hanks perspective is talk to our customers around how we influence those conversations with customers. And the way to begin that is we talk customers through how you use multiple data points, either current data coming out of your contact center, your email support team, your chat team, what you already know about your company and your customers, interviews with key stakeholders to identify things like which services would be priorities, which products would be in priority, who is the right audience, are there political points, are there things inside your company that say one product or one strategy is more important than another. And looking at, beginning with unfiltered listening just to get an inventory of the kinds of conversations that are happening before you decide to engage. And then after all those conversations happen, you begin to develop the scope of what you want to try to tackle in the social space. The big challenge of this is, or the point of these actions, are to ultimately trying to define what the it is when you say you're trying to deliver to a social customer support. So if you start the process through social listening and you begin to start to able to categorize compliments or complaints, questions, problem areas within your company, maybe opportunities within your company, those will start to shape your social strategy as to where you might start. So you're looking for not only customers, you're looking for industry analysts, you're looking for people who are critics and very influential inside your space. You're looking at what competitors are saying and doing. All of those things begin to either bring opportunities to the forefront, or maybe they shine the light on some gaps that you have in your support network. But ultimately what we're trying to do is, again, bring some focus to who's doing the talking, what they're saying, where the conversations are happening, meaning are they happening in Twitter, are they happening on Facebook, are they hidden in forums? So for example, in the T-Mobile example, or let's call it a cell phone example, a mobile product example, if a person is an Apple fanatic, they may be on a forum that has absolutely nothing to do with Apple. They may be in a forum that talks about nothing but awesome applications inside of the Apple environment. So being able to find pockets of people who are enthusiasts not only about your products, but maybe about the complementary products that support what you do is an important place to listen. And you also are interested in what they're saying, what's positive, what's negative, how they're comparing you to a competitor. You know, are they talking because they're happy? Are they talking because they're unhappy? Are they talking because they're excited about a pending product launch? All those sorts of things are the types of things that begin to help you understand where listening is the most helpful for you. So you're looking at not only properties that you own, your handles, hashtags designed to catch your attention, hashtags about your product, maybe hashtags that aren't so complimentary about your product. There's lots of clever antagonists out there that are doing things to try to create communities that are not supportive of your product. Understanding what motivates those communities and what those messages are a way to understand how you begin to influence and engage in those spaces. So one of the things that you want to do is certainly you want to start to leverage the resources that you have today. But if you're looking at places, I'll highlight again when a box, the third from the bottom, talks about when a customer is talking. That's not morning, noon, or evening. That is, for example, certain events like a product launch or a firmware upgrade or a competitor launch. Those are all things that would create action in your community and around your product that you can anticipate, and maybe even create social-ready content that you can engage and push into that conversation. Again, what you're trying to do is inform the community so that you can provide the best story possible from your company's perspective. Here's a reason why a certain feature works the way it does. Here's the reason why a product was introduced in a certain way. Here's an upcoming complementary product. Here's an upgrade to that product. All those types of things can be anticipated, and if you think through past events of similar type, you're able to anticipate what type of content may be requested from your customers. So you can begin to provide information in a social channel that begins to influence the positive and negative effects of what that communication looks like. So not only are you looking for places where people are talking and the content they're talking about, but you're looking for key influencers. You're looking for your brand, your competitor's brand, specific services, specific policies. Again, these are all beginnings of highlighting how you begin to decide what's most important to you to engage. Now the second half of my presentation is a little bit more about how you engage, and once you've decided what your focus in social needs to be. So one of the things that you have to avoid is thinking, well, today we have a contact center, and we do email, and we do chat. Those things happen online, email and chat do, so it must be just like email and chat. We'll have those people take on the social responsibility as well. Well, I think it's a big risk to think that all channels are created equal. So understanding how a unfiltered social communication is very different than a person who wants to come online and go through a self-help application inside your website. So anticipating how to engage that customer in a very conversational tone, not through a script-driven communication like you might do in the contact center, not driven through very defined and very rigid process that may be a decision tree that you put out on your website from a self-help standpoint. Social is going to be much less structured. It's going to be much more of an opportunity for you to build relationship versus get a check in the box for being able to solve a problem or resolve a question. It's to extend a relationship. And so the things that we find is even when customers are still to this day, when a customer says, hashtag Hart Hanks, I love your product, or maybe I'm not so happy with your product, if our people just engage with them and say, thank you for the response. Sorry it doesn't meet your expectation. Let's talk about what it is where we missed. That conversation, just engaging yourself at that level, typically surprises a person in that you've got a real person engaging with me in what seems to be sort of a back channel communication in a way that is much more less pull, less push, where I'm calling an 800 number and say, calling, I have this problem and this is what I'm looking for. If you're just venting and trying to influence your community and you're saying, unhappy with this hotel, unhappy with this rental car, unhappy with this TV, and the manufacturer of that product jumps in and says, let us know what it's about, and then we engage with you in a conversation, we typically can get to an answer, and we can typically swing that conversation to one of surprise and a pleasant conversation, and one that eventually resolves an issue that turns a customer who may have been an antagonist into a customer who's now a fan. And that's what we're trying to do in social. And social is going to be much more about qualitative relationships than quantitative relationships, in that we're going to go a little bit deeper, we're going to stay a little bit more engaged, we may have an ongoing communication with somebody through social, where in the contact center you may be driven by metrics of things like handle time, and you're supposed to be through with the communication in 6 minutes or less, or 12 minutes or less, or whatever it may be. A social communication is more about building a relationship. It just so happens that you're doing it in such a way that others can benefit from it. So if I get somebody who says, I bought a new phone, I bought a new Android phone, I was an iPhone customer in the past, I'm having trouble moving my address book from point A to point B, if I decide to engage with that person and say, sorry you're having problems, tell you what, we have a video that shows you the 3 easy steps to do that in 5 minutes or less, let me send it to you and let me know how it goes. And that also goes out to my entire community. I may be able to help more people than I can ever measure, but I know that I can begin to measure people who are driven to that content either on my YouTube channel or through my website or whatever it may be, and begin to influence more and more people. But again, I'm trying to insert my content in a very proactive way into that community, into a natural conversation with that customer, versus coming in as a hard, script-driven, I need your product, I need your name, I need your address, I need your phone number, now you need to give me more information and I'll walk you through a troubleshooting process. So using support to build relationships, and through that you begin to understand more and more about what's going on inside your entire customer community. So operationalizing social requires things like understanding rules of engagement. So that is the same things you're doing in your other customer support environment. You're deciding what my support boundaries are, when am I going to take a message to direct messaging, when am I going to respond publicly, and all highlighted some privacy concerns that you need to be aware of. You think about places where if you know something's going to happen or you know something is about to happen that you're ready to announce, proactively pushing that content in to give your fans an early notice that something's about to happen, or an early notice that you're about to drop a new product or introduce new software or whatever it may be. Those are the sort of things that you need to talk through in how do I engage with the customer. Leveraging resources is talking about what are the things I have today in my training, in my knowledge base, in my processes, and in my policies that I know I'm going to be able to leverage and push out to my people as value add as I'm pushing it out to social. Point 3, referrals and escalations. There are going to be things that come to you via social which are not going to be things that you want to handle via social, and you may not want to handle in customer support. As example, if someone has an issue, a safety issue, that's going to be more handled through a public relations group or a legal group than it is customer support. I was using your product and I clipped my fingernail by mistake. I was using your product and it was smoking when I was using it. Those kinds of things are things that you typically don't handle through customer service, or you escalate through a contact center to someone outside the contact center to resolve. Same thing in social, in that you're going to have to line up resources internally to let your legal team, your public relations team, your reverse logistics team know, hey, I'm responding to these types of customers via social, but these are not answers that I'm ultimately going to be able to own. So I'm going to need an internal contact inside my organization in these other support organizations that know the priority and the importance of being able to respond to these pieces. And then finally, I'd mentioned before, support boundaries. Just what's in, what's out, what am I going to support, what goes beyond me. So some of the things that just saying, when I'm engaging with customers, what are the do's and don'ts of that? On the left-hand side, avoid robotic responses, avoid pre-written scripts. You probably want to stay away from trying to be too funny or too sarcastic because that can be seen as uncaring or offensive. Trying to push hard sales messages, tough to do in social. You'll get talked down quickly, and your community will let you know that that's not appreciated. As a matter of fact, you may get starved out once they understand you're only there to push product. You probably want to make sure that you are avoiding forward-looking statements such as suggestions of unannounced product or performance in your company. Those kinds of things should be off limits. And then understand that there are places where you might unexpectedly take responsibility for something. So someone says, really didn't like your product and it caused me big problems and I hate it. And someone comes back and says, we're sorry about that. And by doing that, you've implied that you've taken responsibility for something that may or may not be your product's issue. So you have to be careful about falling into poorly thought out automatic responses to customers that acknowledge something happened, because at some point you're not even certain that those things are even relevant to you. So being respectful and authentic and professional and friendly, those are all things you'll have to define for your own company. Am I worried about grammar? Is it acceptable in social to be, use abbreviations? Do I want to use emoticons? Do I not want to use emoticons? All those things fit around your brand and are decisions that you should make for yourself and ultimately legislate to your team about what's acceptable and not, versus leaving that up to a social support rep to do that for you, because they may not be pushing the personality that you want to represent in social for your company. So the good news is, as I mentioned before, just the fact that you are paying attention in social will automatically get you a bounce in customer satisfaction, because people will be saying, finally somebody's paying attention to me, or someone's acknowledging that I have information that's useful, or someone is engaged in a conversation with me that says my value to them is important. So those are the sort of things that are going to be early wins as you walk your way down this path. And the bottom note just says you also have to kind of agree internally that there are going to be things that you don't respond to. There are trolls out there that are out there trying to bait you into free product. They're baiting you into giveaways. They're baiting you into saying things that can be misrepresented so they can make a point that has nothing to do with your company. So understanding how to read those and understanding when to engage with those, you will get spammed in your social channel. So knowing that, how to build filters to drop those communications so they don't take resources, time, and energy taking those out of places. Just people who are nothing but badgering you. That will happen. And so you need to be able to put that in context of where you're going to support and how you're going to support. So that being said, we'll bounce on. So once you've begun to understand how to approach it and how to think through it and how to talk to your peers around what social means and what you want to cover and how you want to cover it, you begin to start to look at the different pieces. You've decided on a piece of technology, and I'm not a technologist, so I probably can drop some names of technology, but I'm not sure I'm a good person to understand what the right piece would be for your company depending on what's going on. But simple market sensing are things that are going to tell me things like what are driving communications in my channel, in my social space. Now, is it positive or negative sentiment? Is the velocity speeding up or slowing down? Is there something driving that velocity? Do I pay special attention to influencers? Those are the types of things that you can begin to get your head wrapped around and your arms wrapped around. Is once I begin to do a standard listening service, I can begin to understand where I want to engage, which channels. And I'll mention Twitter. We see the same thing. Twitter is a higher volume channel for us and our customers than Facebook, but easily Twitter and Facebook together represent 90% or more of the transactions that we deal with. Specialized forums and online forums on websites, things like that drive the last 10%. So looking at not only how you engage in the social channel, but how you connect what happens in the social channel with your contact center and your other communications channels like email and chat, you start to get a holistic view of what's happening in customers. And the interesting piece will be, and I didn't highlight it in this presentation, will be you'll start to see different personas. People who call typically aren't the people who you'll engage on social, aren't the people who will typically send you an email. You'll have different types of skill sets. You'll have different types of questions around technology. You'll have deeper level of understanding of what you're trying to do depending on the channel that you're engaging in. And that's one of the things, the subtle things that we began to learn is that, as example, a social customer is typically going to be better informed, more likely to be an early adopter, very often is very interested in influencing others as much as they are actually having a legitimate problem, and they're very proud to do, to be the first to an issue. So they're looking for acknowledgement. So understanding which people in your community that you should engage with and treat differently, even in your social channel, and if you can find the top 10, 15, 25 people that have a strong voice in your world, and you can give them the right information, they can become ambassadors for you and your brand. And so being able to push content to the right people in the right way, building the right relationships through social could never happen in a contact center. You wouldn't want it to happen in a contact center. Same thing in email. It's going to be very different engagement where a customer in email is going to have a very specific question, want a very specific answer, probably not much detail, and they just want to be told where to go to solve it themselves. Where a person who's going to call you is going to want to walk you through what their story is and have you take interest in what their problem is and then rely on you to solve it for them because they weren't able to solve it for themselves. In social, they're going to be frustrated that they've already tried to solve it for themselves and they weren't able to do it primarily. So interesting points there. So being able to create content specific around how you train social agents is different than how you might train your contact center agents. While the product information is probably the same, some of the policies are the same, they're going to be a little looser in social than they are in the contact center, as example. You're not going to be able to measure social in the same measures of utilization and efficiency, and you may not want to in your social space, and that you want your social agents to maybe do some research, do some background checks, maybe do some creative thinking, and try to be innovative in the way that they communicate with the customer. Those sorts of things are typically dissuaded in the contact center versus encouraged. They're done in other parts of the company. Same thing with the way that you build out the content that they each use, knowing that you're going to have resources for knowledge bases so an agent can get there to the quickest answer possible in the contact center is one way to approach it. But you also have to take that same content and you have to consider it needs to be what I'll call, air quotes, please bear with me, it's going to be socially digestible, in that you're going to go, okay, I need a link, I need a set of short links so that I can respond via Twitter with limited characters to a YouTube video that solves this person's problem. Or I want to send them out to a three-step process that we've built a special website that helps them download software or decide how to connect product A with product B. Those are the sorts of things you're able to do and anticipate in social, and you can get rich content and you can push it out there. You can use multimedia content. You can do all sorts of interesting things delivered through social where you typically wouldn't push some of that content through the contact center. So we talked a little bit about corporate communications. One of the things I left out is we have inadvertently come across situations where we've been in a crisis situation. I'll use this example, but this has absolutely nothing to do with our company. But you can imagine an example of Volkswagen recently when they had to announce that they had issues with their smog emission controls. So you can imagine what happened in social when that type of thing happened. If they weren't ready for that in social, they didn't have baked-in conversations that they knew they were going to have, they didn't have legal approval of what they could and couldn't say, that could become a real issue within a company. So those are the sort of things that when you go into crisis management, you have to think very clearly about what is and isn't acceptable in social, which is not very intuitive because social is usually much more of a free-flowing conversation than it is a full communication schedule. So I bounce over to measurement. I didn't get deep in this, but these are the types of things you'll want to talk about: frequency, tone, feedback, reach, how many people you talk to, topics and KPIs, which are harder to measure, which channels you support. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is create an interaction between social that supports your contact center, identifies issues early, creates training, feeds your support personnel, understands what's going on in your marketing sensing, helps you create content, and so on. So at the last slide I'll present here is talking about things that we've learned through building programs. You need to understand your players. You need to understand who owns the social channel. A lot of times it's marketing. You've got to convince them that there's communications they need to have and support. You need to make sure that you have your other support industries plugged in, legal, PR, and the things I had mentioned before. Understand that this is going to require some flexibility. This is not a tried and true delivery. You're going to have some trial and error here, and you're going to have to remain flexible. Content is still king. You still have to invest in major content creation and probably different media to make this happen. And then last but not least, you're going to have to introduce things like non-traditional measures. Where people want to talk in terms of ROI, a lot of times what you have to do is talk about the early detection of issues through social that helped you deflect calls in other spaces versus saying, I helped 10,000 people this month on social. That doesn't mean I deflected 10,000 phone calls this month. Sorry, I probably could go on an hour about just the measurement piece, but I've already probably run over time, so I'm going to hand it back to you guys, and we'll take questions from here, I believe.
All right.
Back to you, David.
Thank you, Rusty. I do have a few questions, and we have a few questions from our viewers. Before I get to those, for those of you who have not yet submitted questions, feel free to do so by writing your questions into the question box and clicking on the submit button. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible, but if we don't answer your questions during the show, someone will respond within a few days. Okay, so both of you talked about a lot, and you did a very nice job talking about the many of the advantages. But can you just sort of drill down, sort of distill this into something very quick takeaways, or what are the key advantages? Anal, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Rusty.
Key advantages of social in contact centers. That would be, if I had to go back to my slide on the three S's, if you will, it is in satisfaction, in sales, and then it just flew out of my head, I apologize, in support. So the key advantages are that your customers get immediate responses. They're feeling like you care about them. You get to show that you're very proactive and externally oriented, and you get to see improvements in sales as well. You have a better chance of reducing customer churn, a better chance of increasing upsells, and you see savings, right? The cost effectiveness of actually serving on social is a lot more than other channels. So it's really kind of a no-brainer, and I hope Rusty and I really conveyed that to everyone in this no-brainer. There's a lot of benefits.
Yeah, I would agree. I'll point out a couple of other advantages. I think, and I'll point out some great ones. I think the things that we see our customers benefit the most from is social is an early detection center for issues to come that will come later in the product cycle. So if I can get an early lead from my social customers about a tweak or a problem or a advantage of my product, and I can get that to my marketing team, or I can get that to the rest of my support organization, I can be better prepared when that hits the larger masses that are more likely to use contact center. I'd also say it's important that when you're positioning this inside your own company, social doesn't typically replace contact center. It complements it, in that there's a community of people out there that went social because they want to solve their own problems and talk to other people that have the same opinions as they do. So I don't believe the people who are calling 800 numbers are the people who are on social in these same communities. So by going social, you're extending your reach to a new and broader community.
All right, thanks for that. And another question for both of you. How is success measured? What metrics would you use to measure success? Why don't we start with you, Anal?
Success in terms of social is measured in a variety of ways, but the biggest one is I think Rusty covered these again, and I'll let him speak to his own. But the biggest is really in, are your customers actually feeling like they're getting a brand's attention? So one of the things is customer satisfaction. You're going to see a lot more in social customer satisfaction, like feedback cards and whatnot emerging in the future with technology. You're going to see increased, resolution time. You're going to see time to respond. Those are the different things. Remember, social people expect a lot of quick responses. They expect you to be there on in a timely manner. So being able to do that is going to be one of the key ones to measure. I really believe that they're the similar metrics to those of contact centers. You're going to be looking at similar elements in terms of how your team is measured, and you want to make sure social aligns with that as well. Don't just use marketing metrics, which is typically what you see for social. Rusty?
Yeah, I would say, the measures are, I call them non-traditional, in that you don't typically have handle time KPIs and agent utilization measures, and you're really looking at, am I able to solve more questions? Am I able to extend my reach? Am I able to determine issues that I know are going to be bigger issues? So our bigger wins have been taking an unknown issue, identifying it, maybe resolving it, maybe sending it to a product manager to understand that feature needs to change or that product needs to be positioned differently. And so the value has really come from direct customer feedback that it feels different than contact center. As example, we'll produce reports that show call drivers and why customers call, and the same list may not be in the world of social. So I may see a top 10 list in call center that's very different than my issues in social. So being able to measure how effective we are at resolving those issues to prevent them from becoming a big driver in a more expensive channel is a win for us. But it takes a little bit of voodoo economics to kind of connect the dots to say these things would have fallen into your contact center. They would have driven this kind of cost. So there's you have to certainly have senior level sponsorship, a lot of faith, and understand the value of that communication to accept it on face value that you are driving the right types of customer behavior and you are influencing that channel.
All right, thanks for that. Anal, there's a question here for you from one of our viewers. Has to do with the cost of customer service. So could you please repeat the cost of customer service by social, email, and call center? And can you also let our viewers know what the source of that information was?
Definitely. I think what I'd said was that social is typically costs about less than $1 per interaction, whereas telephone is typically about $6 per call, and email ranges from $2.50 to $5 an interaction. And this is data from McKinsey. I found it on a McKinsey report that was presented at a CMO conference. But I think if you Google McKinsey's social care report and then the Harvard Business Review, you'll be able to find it. But these are their findings, which I thought were very much in line with what we typically see with our customers.
All right, thanks for that. I have another question here. I'm going to ask it to both of you. What's the best way to get started with social media? And Rusty, why don't you kick that one off?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at it. I'd say start small. Start by learning as much as you can. So here's an interesting short story. I'll try to keep it concise. Many times when customers come to us and talk about, hey, I need help with customer social support, we'll typically ask, who owns your handles today and how many are there? And the answer typically comes back as, I don't know. So starting with a social audit of what you have, where, and who owns it and what conversations are happening is a great way to get somebody's attention, because usually on your sales portal or in your return product portal, there are customer service questions being asked over and over again that are ignored time and time again, driving customer frustration. So just getting your arms wrapped around where you are and what's happening in your world and where you should be engaging is a place to start. I think once you do that, where you choose to start with your company will be pretty obvious based on your internal priorities.
All right, Anal, any thoughts on that? Best way to get started?
Best way to get started is, as I think I mentioned in the beginning, is look at your own look at your mentions online, right? If that's easy to do, you can see how people are talking about you. There you can see where they're reaching out to you. There's really easy listening tools out there that allow you to do that. And once you get an idea of where they are, it could be on YouTube, it could be on Twitter, it could be on Facebook, whatever it may be, that's the channel that you want to really look at and start seeing how they are, right? Like, how are they interacting with you? How do they want to talk to you? And what channels are they communicating on you with? And that's the one that you want to start with. My guess is, from what we've seen, Twitter tends to be one of the biggest for that for our customers, just because it's easy to actually quickly send a note out. But Facebook is also huge in that area as well.
You mentioned Twitter and Facebook, but is there a best channel to introduce social media on?
Do you mean like a channel, like which one of those two is better?
Well, I think of any of the known social channels. Those are clearly the more popular ones. But is there a better one to start off on? And it doesn't have, you don't have to limit your answer to either Twitter or Facebook.
I would say of the social ones, the Twitters, Facebooks, and Instagrams and whatnot, Twitter is, generally speaking, the biggest social channel out there. People, for some reason, Twitter is doing a big job of reaching out to brands and saying that we are a customer service channel as well, and brands are responding, and so customers are understanding that that is one for them. And there's a lot more technology out there that supports, managing social on Twitter, such as ParkCentral. We do Facebook and Instagram and everything as well. But I think, to me, if you were forced me to choose, I would say the best channel would probably be to explore would be to start with Twitter. But again, it varies. If you're like some secret, gaming company or gaming enthusiast and you have your own channel, you should go there, right? But if you're like a Fortune 500 brand which has big names and whatnot, and people are not necessarily in parts of specific communities, Twitter is probably one of your better channels to look at.
I'd agree, David. I mean, Twitter is a little bit more predictable in what you're going to receive, in the format it's going to come in. Operationally, it's a little bit easier to handle the data, sort the data in to respond than Facebook. Facebook is a pretty close second, depending on how active you are and what you're using your Facebook page to do. But Twitter, not only can you go through hashtags, you certainly probably have your own handles out there. There's a great place to start because it's a very manageable channel. And it is a place where you're going to see enough volume that you're going to get a pretty good idea of what's happening in the world based on what's happening in your Twitter sphere.
All right, thanks. We're at the top of the hour, but I'd like to squeeze one more question in if I can. It's from one of our viewers who writes, I manage social media for a financial aid office at a public university. We've considered making short videos to engage our younger audience. Do you think this is worth the time, money, and effort? And why don't you start off?
Sure. Video is so popular and is only going to become more so. I know that I used to work for retail software, and one of the most interesting findings I saw was that for back to school and whatnot, especially younger people who are in college as well as high school and whatnot, video, especially on YouTube, is one of the biggest places where they go to learn about things. So if your audience, if you're at the public university, if your audience is actually on these social video channels, you should be putting content out there. I would not put a lot of time and effort into creating super expensive videos and whatnot. I think the sort of chosen format is more authentic, right? So who are your students? What are they talking about? What they've learned with financial aid? That's probably going to be something that helps them learn that. Videos, people like to watch rather than read, so I don't think you could go wrong with looking at video to help you engage folks around financial aid.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the cost and time issue is probably relative specifically to your budget and your university, but we have seen people effectively use, and certainly in Twitter because of being able to use bit.lys and be able to use shorten URLs, you're able to effectively use Twitter in video. You're also able to, kind of push videos proactively. So, as an example, if you're in an enrollment period now, or you know that your financial aid approval process is about to come out or the deadline is coming, proactively pushing some of that out into your channel so that you can divert traffic to your website, to your YouTube channel without the questions overwhelming you. Maybe it's a video on how to look up the status of your financial aid in your on your site is a way to do that. So videos, I think, are a very effective way of doing that. We manage a regional set of community colleges, and we've talked to them about doing some of these exact types of things, which are, how do you reach a younger, tech-enabled user who is going to, appreciate a 45-second video or a 2-minute video much more than anything you could do through contact center or self-help channels.
All right, great. Thank you both for that. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions today. We apologize that we were unable to answer all the questions, but as I stated earlier, all questions will be answered via email. Thanks to everyone who submitted questions, and thanks to our speakers today, Anal Patel, Head of Product Marketing at ParkCentral, and Rusty Langford, Vice President of Client Services for Customer Service Experience Support at Hart Hanks. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, you can download it once the event is archived. If you'd like to review this event or send it to a colleague, please use the same web address that you used for today's event. It will be archived for 90 days. Plus, as a courtesy, you'll receive an email once the archive is posted. And just for participating in today's event, you can win this Google Chromecast. The winner will be posted on December 18th on destinationcrm.com. Please visit our website to see if you're the winner. Finally, if you stay on the console at the end of the event, you'll automatically be directed to the CRM Evolution conference page. Attend this 2.5-day event to bring your CRM efforts to the next level. This concludes our broadcast. Thank you for joining us.